chat and maybe just let us know what your name is and where you are watching this webinar from today. So I'm hoping we have a really interesting session to start the School Meals Coalition week off. And before I do get started, I just wanted to say a really big thank you to the School Meals Coalition team for all of the time and effort that's gone into organising this week, and also for the opportunity for the Pacific School Food Network, in partnership with the Alliance for Biodiversity International and CIAT, as well as the Global Child Nutrition Foundation, to present this webinar today. What we would like to do within the time that we have today is to give you some background to the Pacific region and a little bit of an overview of the Pacific School Food Network. We then have a guest speaker, Mrs. Bryn DeMay from the Ministry of Education in Palau, who's going to give us an overview of her work in the Palau context and what she's been doing. We then have a panel discussion where Bryn will be joined by Mrs. Helmtrad Sekas-Iha from Papua New Guinea and Dr. Sarah James from Vanuatu, and they will be sharing their experiences. We have some questions for them, but we would love to have your questions in the chat as well. And then we will finish off by closing and just wrapping up how the Pacific School Food Network and the Pacific region as a whole can work along with the School Meals Coalition and its partners to try and move towards enhancing school food activities in our region. Before we do get into, I guess, the extra detail, a few acknowledgements from us as well. I'd like to thank the wider Pacific School Food Network team. Some people are not able to be with us tonight. There's some people unwell. We've had a few changes and so on. But the Pacific School Food Network team and our broader group have been really supportive of getting this network up and running, and are particularly excited to be able to participate in this event this week. We'd also like to express our sincere thanks to the Global Child Nutrition Foundation team, in particular Arlene, Mamta and Melissa, who have supported the Pacific School Food Network right back from when we started talking about this idea in 2019. I also wanted to thank Ms. Emily Mitchell, who is one of our students who has helped us bring together this presentation this week. Of course, to our speakers who are giving up their time. For some of you might not realise it's nighttime here, so some people have stayed up a little bit later to join us, so thank you. And of course, all of those people out there who are supporting school food in the Pacific and really helping us to think about what the future looks like and to really build that momentum. For those of you who may not be as familiar with the Pacific region, I thought I would just very briefly, provide some context to that. So on this map here, you can see where our three speakers are calling in from tonight with some small flags. But what you will also hopefully realise by looking at this is that it's a really diverse region. We have a lot of small countries, some countries with 1 or 2 islands, some country with several hundred islands. And of course, it is quite geographically isolated. It might not look like a very big distance on a map, but it is a really big distance from some of these places. So within the region, we have technically 3 groups: Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. And within these groups and within the countries in this region, very distinct cultures. Traditionally, cultures and people and communities within these groups have been reliant on subsistence farming, but we are seeing nutrition transition across the region. We're seeing a move towards more westernized styles of eating. Imported, highly and ultra processed food consumption is increasing. Of course, with that, we are seeing the triple burden of malnutrition in the region, with some countries having quite high rates of stunting and wasting, but on the other hand, quite high rates of overweight and obesity in children as well. And of course, some of you might know that this area is, on the edge of climate change. We have so many issues in terms of climate change which impact local food production, and in turn things like school feeding and livelihoods, that it's a really big concern here, and I guess something that we are thinking about whenever we are thinking about any of these types of activities. So with that in mind, school feeding in the Pacific region is, I guess, probably less well recognised than some areas of the world. So we do have a limited number of national school feeding programs in place across the region, but we do have many other activities which might not be rolled out at a national scale, but are focusing on how to link with local food systems, thinking about food systems transformation, thinking about how to provide food in schools, as well as the school food environment. And of course, while homegrown school feeding offers many benefits, that's something that can be really challenging in our region. We do have atoll countries which have a limited ability to produce food. With the remoteness of some of the islands, we have challenges with food procurement, food storage and safety, and preparation of food. And school feeding is a relatively new concept in this area when thinking about large-scale school feeding. So that brings with it extra complexities. To give you some context to the Pacific School Food Network too, before we move into asking Bryn to tell us a little bit about her work. The Pacific School Food Network, as I mentioned earlier, started in December 2019 at the when the Global Child Nutrition Foundation Forum was taking place in Cambodia. It was the first time that we had anyone from the Pacific region being able to attend the forum. And the discussions that we had, along with some work that had been done by the University of the Sunshine Coast and the FAO Sub-Regional Office for the Pacific Islands, really led to us thinking about how can we connect people and how can we establish a mechanism to support collaboration, to share resources and share experiences across the region. So with that, the vision of the Pacific School Food Network is to improve the health of Pacific Island children, their families and their communities through healthier school food and nutrition environments. One thing I did want to just make note of is because while we are talking more broadly about school feeding across this week, within the Pacific context, because we have limited school feeding programs at a national level, we've tried to capture what we are focused on as school food and nutrition environments so that we aren't, I guess, isolating our work or narrowing the focus of our work and our advocacy. So that's just, I think, an important thing to keep in mind. So with that, we aim to provide opportunities for collaboration, network and capacity building across the region, provide a forum for technical input into school food provision and nutrition education activities, help in terms of policy guidance and providing leadership, provide an avenue for sharing information and resources, advocate for research and greater evidence to inform school food activities for our region, and play a role in resource mobilisation for research to inform those activities and implementation with the ultimate aim of improving Pacific school food environments. As well, to give a little bit of extra background, just to let you know of some of the work that has been done in this space recently. I mentioned earlier that there is growing momentum in the area in thinking about schools and school food provision and school food environments. And I thought this might just set the scene to let you know about some of the work that is underway. Unfortunately, today we haven't got the representative from our partner from the Alliance of Biodiversity, Dr. Danny Hunter. He's participating in some work here that you can see around understanding school food provision in the Pacific and scoping the potential for local food systems to link into that, which links back nicely to the idea of homegrown school feeding in our region. But with that, I think it's probably time to hear from our guest speaker, Bryn. And I just wanted to thank Bryn because we do call on her a lot to share her experience in the region. And I know that you always put so much effort into thinking about communicating your message, Bryn, as well. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I have your slides, so you're more than welcome to tell me just to move along when you're ready, if you like.
Hello?
We can hear you, Bryn. Yep.
Okay. So good evening from Palau. Let me go ahead and just quickly introduce myself. So my name is Brenda May, and I'm with the Bureau of School Operations with the Ministry of Education in Palau. I work as a program manager for the food service program on 8 years now. Next slide. Going on to the next slide. So as a program manager, I'm in charge of overseeing the school lunch program for all public schools. And the lunch program feeds about 2,350 public school students on a yearly basis. In the public school system, there are about 17 public schools, 16 elementary schools, and one high school, which is Palau High School, and it's literally across the Ministry of Education main central office. And in the cafeterias are approximately 30 cooks attending to the school kitchens and cafeterias every school meal. So we started with just a school lunch, but we now, as of last October, we now have school breakfast. So that's quite a bit of a change and a challenge, and also something interesting and good for the students because they now have breakfast as well. So as a program manager, I mainly plan, organize, and manage the food service program and its operations. I supervise about 4 staff and work with 2 nutritionists, one from Chaika, Japan, and one from ICDF Taiwan. There are nutritionist volunteers here working with me to assist with menu development and nutrition management pertaining to the student lunch menu. To establish and implement guidelines and requirements for all activities. I monitor and evaluate program services to ensure productivity, safety, performance, and efficiency goals are met. And I prepare and maintain records and reports on operation and progress of the program toward its objectives, usually on a monthly and a quarterly and a yearly basis. Next slide, please. So I'm passionate about providing healthy student meals and improving the food service program. One is of the inactive lifestyle that have led to the NCD crisis in Palau, especially for the youth. When and where? Because I'm also a product of the public school system. I got promoted 1995 at Ngaralong Elementary School, which is the northernmost tip of Babaldab Island. And I graduated 1999 at Palau High School, the only public high school in Palau. So I'm very passionate about my work because I'm an alumni to both the elementary school and the high school. According to a hybrid survey conducted in 2017 regarding NCD prevalence in Palau, 9 out of 10 adults consume less than recommended amount of fruits and vegetables. 2 out of 10 consume less than 1 serving of fruits and vegetables daily. Almost half, that's 45.5% of adults in Palau consume processed meat at least once per day. More than 3 out of 4 adults in Palau consume at least 1 sugar-sweetened beverage each day. And 1 out of 2 adults in Palau are classified as having a low level of physical activity. So you see where the problem is. And one of the main years that I do with my work is trying to find solutions to help the youth and the students of Palau. Therefore, one of the priority areas for health improvement in Palau includes reducing overweight and obesity by improving diet and nutrition and increasing physical activity using evidence-based programs. These are ongoing projects. Next slide, please. So this is the food service program timeline. These are the achievement for the past 8 years. So when I started 2014, as you see, it goes to year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. That's 2019 to now present. And this is mainly the timeline and details of the works that I've been doing. Maybe go to the next slide and I'll just kind of highlight. So food service program highlights at a glance. So 2014 to 2015, that was my first year. I eliminated corned beef, spam, and hot in the menu. I made sure that all those heavily processed food are wiped out from the menu. In 2015 to 2016, I increased the budget by 100,000. I switched from food vendors to cafeteria for Palau High School, and we started serving more fresh fruits and vegetables. Year 2016 to 2017, we added staple meat options and increased fish, taro, plus fruit and vegetable amounts, utilizing local vendors. That's homeschooled farms. From 2017 to 2018, we replaced outdated school kitchen appliances. We added quarterly kitchen inspections from the nutritionists, as well as doing cook workshops on a quarterly basis. Additional vehicle for errands and deliveries while utilizing resources from partner agencies. We also started doing the monthly newsletter. From 2019 to present, the current moment, we're continuing to replace outdated kitchen items and appliances. We've conducted mini cook workshops. That's due to the COVID pandemic. We've maintained kitchen inspections by the nutritionists. We're working with NCD unit to draft policies, and this is the Student Nutrition and Wellness Standard as promulgated by the National Congress. We continue to improve school lunch menu, and we've provided cook trainings and other important aspects of a food service program. Next slide, please. So NCD prevention within the ministry and collaborating agencies. Why do we do that? Because we want to promote a healthy lifestyle for students to achieve in order to be healthier citizens today and years, and also decrease the rise of NCDs in Palau. How do we do that? Through ongoing activities that we do, such as food nutrition education throughout all the schools, improving student lunch menu, and creating health and nutrition policies mandated by the leaders of Palau. These are through the policies we can implement and effect change. When do we do this? All the food service program activities are done monthly and quarterly basis throughout the school year, as well as conducted cook workshops on a quarterly basis to help improve cooking skills as we implement healthier student lunch menus. Lastly, we collaborate with partner agencies such as the NCD unit under the Ministry of Human and Health Services, other ministries such as the Ministry of Agriculture, Fish and Environment, nonprofit organizations, JICA, Taiwan Technical Mission, US Embassy, Japan Embassy, Taiwan Embassy, community partners, schools and parents as well, and in order to help the fight against NCDs in Palau. Until we have a perfect system, we have to continue to, as I mentioned in Cambodia, when I met Sarah and the others for the Global Child Nutrition Forum, we have to continue to communicate, collaborate, and care. Those are the 3 C's that I abide by. And by trying to be creative and innovative, in the end, healthy meals will equal healthy kids. And that is why I do my job daily, and I'm passionate about it. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Bryn. It's always really wonderful to hear you speaking about your passion for your
Thank
work.
you.
And I think what you've changed in that short time is really amazing. And I think when you think about the follow-on effect of that, it's incredibly inspiring, I think, for our region to do that. So thank you again for sharing your story, and we're really lucky to have you participate in a panel with some discussions around what's happening in the region and some of the challenges that we might have thinking about policy and practice and research. We're also really fortunate to join us tonight, Mrs. Helmtrude Sekas Iha, and Dr. Sarah James as well to contribute to this discussion. And I'm just going to ask Trudy whether you might be happy to give us a quick overview of your work in Papua New Guinea to, I guess, set the scene for our discussions, and then we'll pass to Sarah as well to hear about your work in Vanuatu.
Thanks. Thanks. Sorry, we have having power issues, so I can't get my camera on.
That's okay. We can just hear you.
Yeah, so we've had what we call the.
Okay, we can just hear you.
Yes, yes. We've had the school gardens. We call it's a homegrown sort of feeding model. Basically, we had 3 objectives around the whole school garden program. That's to generate income for the schools, use the gardens or the horticulture component of the project for sort of provide that practical learning environment. And the third bit was to see if we could design a model for feeding from the gardens. And on top of that, we had a poultry component. But I think the thing that made it more better or successful was the governance component of the program, where we had a policy endorsed by the national government, and there were directions down to the provincial and down to the local, to the district where the pilot schools were programmed, to ensure that the activities that were carried out were well received by the government, and that's for sustainability. And as I said earlier, the project itself generates income, it's self-sustained, so that when now that the donor has left, DFET was funding that project. The schools are able to fund their own gardens, to sustain the poultry component, to be able to use the gardens for learning, and that's grades 9 to 12. And then as part of that, we had an education component to the school gardens or the homegrown model, where we mapped out the curriculum, had all the subjects in our education system aligned with the activities, you know, that were coming out from the project itself. So it ranged from subtopics of health, nutrition, agriculture, all of that. Yeah, basically we did not go out to the communities. We stayed within the schools and ensured that the pilot was governed by the school. It was recognized by the education and the government system, both at the provincial and national level. Yeah, I'll stop from here and over.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Trudy. And I think what's really exciting about what you've spoken about is it's not just the school feeding, isn't it? It's you talking about how you're integrating it into curriculum. And there is a really great question that has come through the Q&A, but what I might do is allow Sarah to just maybe give us an insight into some of your work in Vanuatu and what's happening there at the moment.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Yes, so in Vanuatu, we don't have a national program as such. There's a range of different programs that are going on across the country that are being implemented, combinations of government and partner organisations. The school food that is across most schools is largely imported food, so rice and tin fish, tin meats, So in terms of the homegrown school feeding programs, we have a sort of farm to school model, which is where we're sort of looking to support and develop the supply chains between local farmers, supporting the schools. So in that way, supporting farmer livelihoods, but also increasing fresh food supply to the schools. Then we also have other schools which are looking to produce their own food, so their own gardens. This is particularly beneficial for schools that have a sufficient amount of land around their properties, which they can produce the food for their students. So we have a range of different approaches, and some schools have taken it further from just primary production and are looking at also value adding, things like producing their own like flour from different crops. So there's a range of different approaches that are being taken across the islands and across the communities, depending on the sort of needs and capacities of the local communities.
That's really great, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. And I guess one question that just quickly comes to mind that I have is, you mentioned about the farm to school program and linking with local farmers. What are some of the challenges that you might have experienced in trying to do that? Or has it been quite a, I guess maybe not easy, but a process which has gone quite well? What has it been like for you and the people that you're working with to do that?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really great question. And I would say it's, differed in the different communities depending on who, which the partner organisations are working on implementing it and how it's being managed. In the Torba province, for example, which is our northernmost province, they've had a really successful farm to school program there for a number of years. It started around 2019, and they've done a lot of work. So the government's been working with a partner organisation there, Vanuatu Skills Partnership, and the local community, and they've done a lot of work with the farmers. A lot of work in developing agricultural capacities and skills at the farm level, and then also nurturing and building that relationship between the farmers and the schools. Because of one of the challenges that we've seen in other areas is issues of like consistency of supply, quality of supply over time, the sort of match between what farmers are growing and what the schools, want and use, or what people are familiar with cooking with. So I think, there's quite a bit of work that goes into facilitating that relationship, but there's definitely some really good examples of where that has been really successful.
It's really wonderful to hear about the success of that, isn't it? And seeing, I guess, all of the work that goes into it, because I think that's probably something that we have to realise is that's a lot of work to build that and sustain it as well. It's really fantastic. And I can see we have got a question on our Q&A about how our panelists engage with children and young people, and how have they helped shape your programs? And then secondly, how do you engage with them across islands and rural areas? Bryn, I don't know whether you'd like to answer that one first, and then we can go around everyone.
Okay, I was just saying that it's been a pleasure working with the students as they're receptive to what we're doing. They're very, they kind of welcome us, even though it's the challenge is how to provide healthy eating to the schools and promote nutrition and good food. And this is why the nutritionists are very important. And I've made it a mission that on my second year, I was able to acquired 2 nutritionist volunteers, one from JICA, one from Japan and one from Taiwan, because I feel the need to teach the children about healthy eating so that they're able to enjoy the food and not, so like we have big food waste, and the budget is just not going to waste. So they've been very well receiving of all the information that we've given them. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we go around on a monthly basis doing nutrition education for all the students. So all the schools, we within a year's time, we're able to go around conducting food and nutrition education from the nutritionists, and they're usually very happy about it. Like they learn all the information they can get, and in that way they're able to kind of relate the information that they're learning to the table when they have lunch and now breakfast every day. So it's challenging, but we're loving every moment of it. Yeah.
That again is so wonderful to hear, isn't it, Bryn? Because I think they can have a lot of impact more broadly to those children and young people in terms of taking home some of those messages to their families and communities as well.
The idea of spreading the communication is well out there, so that they're able to receive all the information they can get and share with the community, like their parents, their friends, everyone, and join us in this fight against NCDs in the Pacific. Yeah. And at first, when we started, we noticed when we tried promoting all this healthy eating and providing local fruits and vegetables, they were kind of hesitant about it. And they're like, we don't want to eat vegetables. And there was a big food waste. And now, as we noticed, they're really getting into it. And they're actually enjoying their lunch, and we're providing all the food that they want, and we make sure that they get them on a daily basis. So at the end, we've decreased the amount of food waste as well. So that is good. Money is not being wasted. Government funding is not being wasted. That's the important part.
Yeah, and I think too, it's a really good point about the waste as well, isn't it? Like if you are in a place like the Pacific,
Right.
we do have to be really careful of our resources, like everywhere, but maybe even more so. So I think that's really nice to hear about that that has really changed as well.
Yeah.
And it's something that's been a focus for you.
Their outlook on healthy eating. Yep.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And Trudy, could you tell us a little bit about your experience in terms of how you might be engaging with children and young people? And if you have done that more broadly than the location you're in, how are you going about doing that as well?
Yeah, sure. I think for us, we had a survey that we conducted throughout the schools that we programmed in, and basically we actually wanted to understand, students' diets, their agricultural knowledge, as well as their role in and the school's role in providing nutritious food for students, and then we were focusing more on the boarding students, which was mainly the girls. Boys were mostly day students. But that's how we got the students engaged to actually help us, program better, how we could, really utilize or have them have the insights to the activities that we were doing. But all in all, they were part of, using the gardens to learn. They were also eating from the gardens when they cooked the food through the school mess. And they were part of, when I spoke earlier about this, the map, the interventions we had around mapping the curriculum and whether teaching subjects and syllabus and all of that. Students were also approached through the teachers on how we could, better have all of those materials capture what they really wanted to, know and all of that, apart from the formal curriculum that's already in place by the government. Making sure that we are in line with what the government, the standards and everything about school garden across the three sectors: agriculture, health, and education. So we don't, go off. And we're in line with what the government is in place in terms of the policies. Over.
Thanks, Trudy. That it sounds like a really comprehensive process there, and that the children have had quite a lot of input into that. But I guess it's at the end there, you mentioned some of the challenges that we still have to fit within particular ways of doing things or models, or aligning to what might be happening in terms of current policy too. Which is a really important consideration. And Sarah, what about in Vanuatu? What kind of things might you be doing to engage with the children, and what kind of success has that had?
Thanks. Yeah, really a good question. I think in Vanuatu, healthy eating and nutrition has been part of sort of curriculum, and since at least like 2012, when we had that Healthy Islands initiative. There's various policies that are looking at healthy eating and healthy school canteens at that higher level. But the challenges in terms of like dissatisfaction, I guess, with the existing school meals is something that is something that comes up quite regularly. So I think where students have the opportunity to access these other farm to school programs or the food gardens on site at the school, which they often participating in, there's really, really positive responses. And certainly when we see like our local high school in Port Vila, was a big program of school meals was developed during COVID, and the response among the students was incredibly positive. So just getting that feedback about how important these programs are to the students, which is great.
It's wonderful. And I'm sure they really enjoyed and appreciated having their input into that as well, and having some ownership over, what's happening as well. I think that's an important part, isn't it? I have another question here for you too, and we might go around again and start with you, Bryn. What are some of the constraints to using a homegrown school feeding type model for you in Palau? And have you got any examples or strategies that you are using or you would like to use to be able to use more locally produced food?
So hold on. The constraints. Let me see. So for the constraints, sorry, so for some of the constraints might include a lack of funding, lack of funding resources that at times it limits the ideal intake of fruits and vegetables for all students. Nonetheless, the public school system still offers quite an abundance of local healthy foods for student meals. Another thing is lack of time and effort to make a complete menu when food sources run out. As you say, we're from limited islands and, middle of nowhere sometimes, you would say. Or bad weather will contribute to the farmer's ability to provide local fruits and vegetables. So, with all the climate changing, you never know. With Palau's weather, you've been here, it's very unpredictable. It can rain 1 minute and the next minute it's cloudy, the next minute it's sunny and back to windy. It's just confusing sometimes, even for the plants. And we still need to train the cooks to have cooking skills. in order to entice students to love eating fruits and vegetables, including the main staple of Palau, which is taro and fish. And we try to do that, provide that on a monthly basis. So we really promote local healthy eating, and we try to teach the kids to like them and appreciate them. And that's through the food education that we do. So those are kind of like the main constraints that I would see. Another thing, I was like looking at the presentation of you mentioned that the atolls are far away too, and Palau has like almost 400 islands, and there's one main island with mostly the schools on the countryside, and then you come across the bridge to the central island where there's like four elementary schools and one high school, and then you have three outlying public schools, so we have to go by boat, and that usually takes an hour to 2 hours by boat, and depending on the weather it could take more than that. And there's three schools that are in the Southwest Islands, and that's like halfway to Indonesia, so it takes a day to go by boat, and sometimes 2 days. So those are kind of the constraints that we do. We have to provide mostly for the food supplies on a quarterly basis, because it depends on the boat. It's very expensive. It started like costing like 20,000 per trip to now it's probably 40,000 per trip, depending on gas, with the gas price going up. So those are kind of the constraints we have as far as providing to all the schools in Palau, because they're all different, and they have all the geographical locations are different as well. So we have to take those into consideration. But right now we're very proud that we have solar panels installed to the three Southwest Islands, at the three Southwest schools. Yeah. So for those islands, we're able to provide frozen goods instead of just canned supplies and local supplies. Yeah. So that's kind of a big change. They now have a freezer that we can do food storage. So we're proud of that. It's still an ongoing challenge. Yeah.
I think hearing all of those challenges, Bryn, it's just even more of a testament to the work that you've done with your team
Yes.
in trying to do your school feeding, isn't it? Like all of those complexities, and like you say, some things like the climate, you know, there's very little you can do about that apart from trying to preempt, which is hard enough in itself to do that.
Even today with the lack of staff, when my delivery staff gets sick, I'm out there delivering. So I was just delivering right before I came to join the Zoom meeting. So I'm like, I hope I'm not late, because I was just delivering fresh fruits and vegetables. We do that every Monday. So every week we deliver fresh fruits and vegetables. And we just delivered banana and mostly local vegetables. So we're very proud. We try to work hard as much as we can to promote healthy eating in Palau.
It's so inspiring, I think, to hear that, Bryn. Like I said, especially with those challenges that you've got to keep in mind. Yeah. And Trudy, what about your work in PNG? What are some of the biggest challenges for you if you are thinking about homegrown feeding or something similar to that? And with your gardens, what are some of the things that you've come across? And do you have any strategies or mechanisms for, I guess, addressing those challenges too?
Yeah. So I think for us, one of the major constraints to promoting the homegrown school feeding here was that we had issues where we had theft, stealing of the crops that we had established, or the gardens we established in schools during harvest time. They'd go missing in the night. But for us, it's okay because, someone's feeding himself somewhere. But yeah, we had lots of theft issues with the garden as well as the poultry sheds. And for that, we came up with an approach or a strategy where we had an agreement, a memorandum of understanding between the project, the provincial government and the district, where we would involve the local security or the police to jump in where needed, and to provide that sort of buffer to anyone coming into the school area to steal. So it's not just asking the schools to look after their property, but also going to the provincial governments to help support the schools' need for security. The other issue was because the schools were generating, well, in PNG Kina was around 38,000, some good amount of money, reasonable, as net profit after we did a cost benefit analysis. We also found out that, there was mismanagement of the funds that we helped the schools establish, all of that. So what we came up with was went back into the system using our governance component, school governance component, and looked around or reviewed the school learning improvement program, so that's a program where all activities within a school is captured in the education system, and if there's any finances that's going in as revenue, then it will be monitored. So acquittals, request, everything should be monitored by the province, by the local district. And so the income that's generated by schools are not seen as project or standalone activities and could be mismanaged by teachers, but also, there's oversight provided by the authorities out there. So that's how we manage sort of the two major challenges. And there were others like climate and COVID and others that interrupted the homegrown feeding as well. Yeah. Over.
Thank you, Trudy. I think you raised some really interesting challenges too that maybe are not things that come to mind straight away when thinking about gardens, but are obviously really important in thinking about that governance and working with the wider community and the other groups within our communities as well, for those gardens and looking after them. And Sarah, I'm just wondering if you have any other experiences or other challenges that come to mind when thinking about homegrown school feeding or your farm to school program, and any strategies that you've used to try and work around those.
Thanks. I think we would have very similar challenges to those that have been raised. It was really great listening to what Trudy was just saying then about the importance of governance and the challenges that they've faced. I would say that is probably one of the biggest challenges that we've found in a number of different programs. So once you've set up either the school garden or the supply with local farmers, then how that is managed, particularly the school garden that's run by the school. So in some examples, we have issues where schools have had access to large areas of land, but then that land has come under dispute between potential landowners, and so then they no longer have access to that land, and so the program is then compromised. Other examples of challenges of within the school about how it's managed. So if for example, students are putting in labour, how is that organised? What happens with the produce after it's harvested, if it is sold for sale? Again, what Trudy was talking about the management of funds and allocation of resources. I think all of those things are really key in terms of getting long-term buy-in from both the students and from the wider community to a program which is supposed to be essential to its success. So yes, in addition to the challenges of the natural disasters and climate change and obviously budget and resources are a really big challenge in Vanuatu, probably similar to most Pacific islands. We have a youth bulge. Half of our population is under 19, so it's a big percentage of the population that are needing to be catered for, and it's very under resourced. So multiple challenges, but yes, also examples of where those have been met. Over.
That's really wonderful, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. And I just listening to you talking about that, it's probably a really great lead-in, because I know that we're getting to the end of our time, to ask you all as well, what would enable school feeding to be enhanced in the Pacific, in your opinion? What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you would see as being useful going forward? And I know with this week of events, part of it's around sharing practice, but it's also about thinking, how can we work together? So I guess for you, Sarah, first of all, maybe if we go back the other way, what are 1 or 2 things that would help you or help with what's happening in Vanuatu and moving forward and enhancing your school feeding programs or your school food activities in another way?
Thanks. One option that was actually in discussion with a friend of mine here who is very proactive works a lot in the nutrition space, was to think about being strategic in terms of, particularly for encouraging school gardens, what people are growing. So again, in Vanuatu, the diet is very carbohydrate heavy. There's a lot of rice consumed, but also the traditional crops, taro and cassava and manioc and kumala. So, but in terms of when we look at the surveys and what is limited or missing in diets, we really need to be getting a lot more greens and encouraging them. So looking strategically, if we have limited use of space or limited resources in terms of student labour or engagement, then looking at making the most out of the land and the resources to improve, to get those nutritional benefits. I think that would be something that's really important. Obviously, additional resources and improving governance structures, looking at and developing best practice models from where that has been successful. There are obviously so many factors that go into the success of something in one community, can't necessarily be simply replicated across all the different islands. But I think there is definitely some really valuable lessons learned. And so for us, I think some more research and some more analysis on that, which sounds like some of our other participants are already doing. Yes, I think for us that would be really key things to focus on.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. And I think you've raised some really good points there too about learning from each other and also the fact that what will happen or what's happening in one Pacific Island might not be the perfect thing to roll out in another as well, and trying to understand the complexities, which I think is a real challenge for our region as well. But that's wonderful. And Trudy, what do you think, if there was 1 or 2 things that you would like to see happen in the future to help enhance the work that you're doing, what would that look like for you?
Yeah, I think there's a cat. There was a survey that we just conducted recently, and it's just obvious that students' knowledge is lacking in nutrition, maybe because they're not exposed in schools to nutritious, healthy foods. And even the school food environments are not providing enough of the healthy stuff to students, or healthy foods. So I mean, I would basically agree that, you know, sharing and learning of information, as well as one of the ones that I was really thinking out the other day about was, you know, stronger political commitment from our governments to ensure that there's funding, not just from private sector, but from the government, to ensure that these really good models are used, or are funded throughout the islands in the Pacific, PNG, and the rest of the islands as well. Yeah, I would yeah, add this too. Over.
Thanks, Trudy. I think they're really wonderful suggestions. And I think the point about greater political will is something that has been discussed for a while, but I think there's a lot of movement towards that too. I think people recognizing, or governments recognizing, some of the challenges we have. And Bryn, as our last person, what's one or two things that might help enhance school feeding for you in Palau? You're still on mute, Bryn.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. So it's mentioning the strategies, some strategies we've implemented by bits of collaboration with the stakeholders include collaborating with the Ministry of Health and Human Services by having the hospital provide fruits and vegetables on a weekly basis to a majority of the public student population. And that's around 75% that they provide free, fresh, local fruits and vegetables, so that we save out of our funding. We'll pay like 25% aside from the 75% that they provide every week. And we utilize partner agencies, a lot of the ministries, the non-government agencies, as well as semi-governments, to come in and help set up school farms by means of utilizing the school campus land for farming, providing tabletop gardens for those with small land areas, and providing fertilizers and seedlings, including tips on how to maintain the school farms so that they can maintain it on a yearly basis. And I guess I would say that what's needed to enhance homegrown school feeding is the willingness to accept the challenge and start by becoming active, because it's not about the talk, it's about the talk and the walk, where everybody involved they have to be passionate about what they're doing, interested, and make sure that every plan implemented will bear fruit. In other words, be successful. Again, it takes a village to raise a child, and everyone must be involved, including the students and the parents themselves. As for me, I just love what I do, and being able to accept the challenge by being creative, working outside the box, collaborating, being patient, and going through the improvements one step at a time. We all have to work together to promote homegrown school feeding, and knowing that it does make a difference for every student in need of a good, healthy school meal. So in 2014, the food service program budget was at 721,000 per year. Currently, now that we have breakfast added to the lunch, our budget for this year has increased and is now around $1,045,000. And the hard work has paid off. I now have more than $1 million plus budget a year. I'm very happy about it. We still have a long way to go, but at least I know that the National Congress, and including the President of Palau, recognizes the value of healthy school meals and the positive impact it provides for the future generation of Palau. And I'm just very thankful that I finally, after 8 years, I have now a 1 million plus yearly budget. And so, like I say, it takes a village to raise a child. Everyone's input is very important in this task that we're doing. Yeah, I appreciate being part of this panel, and thank you very much. And I appreciate all the many good things that you guys are working in the Pacific region, you know, to help me help the fight against NCDs in the Pacific. So yeah, thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
I think that's a really lovely sum up at the end, Bryn, because I think we're really fortunate to have you and to have Sarah and Trudy join us today. And I know we're right at the end of the time, so we do need to wrap up. But I think what's just really exciting is there's a lot, I think, that we can take from the global discussions. We might be in a different geographical location, and we've talked about some of the challenges to that. But I think you've all talked through some of the strategies today too that hopefully might be useful in global discussions back with other groups. And I think that's something that's really exciting about the School Meals Coalition and this week is being able to come together and share some of those experiences and stories. So thank you very much, Bryn, Sarah and Trudy, for your time today. And thank you very much for everyone who's joined us as well. It's been a really wonderful discussion and just really, really wonderful to hear about the inspiring stories as well. So thank you all for joining us, and we will sign off. And I believe there will be a recording of this one available too afterwards. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Please do share. Thank you.